Yeah, so my book it's written for the everyday person. It's honestly not written for the person that's following and tracking this issue so closely. They probably are aware mostly of what I've written,
Great.
at least the first part, because the first part gives a lot of the basic facts that
Mhm,
probably you and I know, and I'm guessing a
mhm,
lot of your audience already
mhm,
knows. We know that the
mhm.
suicide thing is total emotional blackmail, so I get into that and how they're doing that. And but I what's a little different about my book that maybe people in your audience would enjoy is the very practical tips that I include. And then I also put in a chapter on a MFT class, a marriage and family therapist. The California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists is the biggest family therapy or biggest therapy association, I think, in the country. I don't know if it is the biggest, it's close to the biggest. And I went to their convention last year and I went to their trainings. And I wrote up one about how, what I call how to manipulate parents to trans your kid. I called it emotional manipulation was the name of the chapter. I think I called it, I
Mhm.
didn't call it that actually. I called it therapists manipulate parents. I don't know how I don't remember the chapter. I just won't say it. Anyway.
That's okay. We get the point. It's great. It's brilliant.
um,
Tell us, tell us what that is. Tell us what they're doing, and then tell us how to protect our kids.
Yeah, so they basically weaponize empathy to the nth degree. I've talked about this in a few other podcasts, and I'm going to say it again. This is crazy what they do. So we've all heard of the stages of grief, right? So in this training,
Mhm.
they actually go through the stages of grief for a parent who has a trans child. So if you're a parent that has a trans child and you have questions, it's even if it's a sudden onset, it's a 16-year-old that's never shown any signs, was totally normal in this arena, and then suddenly they spent 6 months on YouTube. They come out and they're like, you know what, I'm trans, and the parents like, I have questions. Instead of the therapist being like, let's explore that, let's see what's going on for them, let's see what sunk them into being online so much and made them feel like they had to grasp onto an online community and something else, they say your kid knows themselves and you need to go along with that and you need to grieve your cis child, and you are in the
Wow.
denial phase of grief.
Wow.
And
Wow.
but they do it in this very, like, kind way, like, "I'm here for you, and I will help you move through,
Wow.
I'll help you." Of course, they're not gonna say it straight out, but they basically taught us as therapists to look at it through that model that we're helping them move through these stages so that they could get to the acceptance phase and help their child get what they need. What they need, maybe puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones or whatever, basically anything the child wants, because they believe that the child leads, and they believe that if a child spends months and months on end on YouTube, that's them figuring themselves out, and we need to respect that. So I just couldn't believe how they twisted that around.
So there's no actual therapizing, because for example, when my parents went through a divorce and it manifested itself in certain emotional reactions, we went, and as a family together, and then myself individually, we went through that and figured, I mean, obviously the therapist knew, my parents knew what was going on. Obviously I was having a reaction to my parents' divorce, but there was actually exploration, albeit I wasn't aware of it. And then we realized, okay, this is what's really going on, and gave coping mechanisms. I feel like today, and I have said it, and I have been crucified online. I think that, especially in these children, that, gender confusion is a mental health issue. I've drawn parallels, and it's not 100% accurate. And obviously, I'm not the expert at all, but to like, I've written up two scenarios, and I'm like, what mental disorder is this? And some people have been like, schizophrenia. It sounds like it's schizophrenic. It sounds like someone with with body dysmorphia, as opposed to gender dysphoria. So it seems to me that you can't say that, though, that you as a professional, as a therapist, are no longer allowed to call out mental health issues or a child crying out for help, like that you're censored the same way I as a lawyer was not allowed to say that's illegal, that's unconstitutional. The same way doctors were not allowed to say, hey, this is a respiratory virus. We've never created a vaccine to prevent the spread of
Mhm.
respiratory viruses, because they don't work that way. That masks don't prevent the spread of airborne particles, and those people got censored. So is number one, do you feel that? And number two, are therapists getting censored and canceled the same way that lawyers were, and the same way we've seen other medical providers in other contexts.
For sure, lots of censorship. I think the most of the censorship is actually coming from people themselves. There's a lot of self-censorship. When I
Mm-hmm.
first started speaking out, because I was in this sleep mode from my disability, I didn't even realize how tough the censorship was, because people were like, "You're so brave," and I was like, "What do you mean? I'm just saying like common sense." Like
Mm-hmm.
what I was
Right.
saying, if somebody said that in 2016, 2017, most people wouldn't have said I was being brave. It was just normal. But 4 years later, 5 years later, all of a sudden it was brave and radical, because I don't think I know, there were therapists that did speak out and they were been made examples of. Many people did lose their jobs. At that point, when I was first starting to speak out, I don't think the conversion therapy laws were in effect. It was around 2021 when they started to get into effect. And, the legislation in California, like SB 107, was just coming through. It hadn't come through. So it wasn't in law yet, but it was certainly culturally, it was already bound. And people were very afraid to say anything. They, culturally, people really learned to just pipe down about it, and if they felt strongly about it, they just avoided the subject. If they Most people just kind of didn't think about it, and they just said, well, those people are crazy, so I'm just not going to engage, or they would work around it somehow. But about what you're saying,
Well, it's
oh,
oh,
go
no, no, no.
ahead.
You made me think of two things: the emotional blackmail, and I was going to say the emotional blackmail, but it's the same thing that they did during the BLM riots. It's the same exact
Exactly.
thing that they did during COVID. It's the same exact thing that they're doing
It's
now.
all
If
the
you have, I
same.
mean, it's all the same. Even with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, like if you ask
All
a
the
question,
same.
you're anti-Semitic, or you're a terrorist, a supporter, or and it's just, we call it here with Facts, Law, Truth, Justice, the Trojan horse. They just pick a different topic and
Mhm.
then use the same type of gaslighting and fear mongering and emotional
Yeah.
manipulation, like you're saying, to get you to silence you so that you don't ask questions